When I got to the White House in 2017, two Federal Reserve officials had published a white paper on the digitization of the US dollar over the blockchain. Yes, like Bitcoin. I'm a 53-year-old man. I think Bitcoin is bullshit. There are two Fed people talking about digitizing the US dollar on the blockchain. I better get up to speed on this. I went back to SkyBridge. I bought the URL bitcoin.com. And that is when everything changed.
Anthony Scaramucci, an American financier, broadcaster, and best-selling author.
He is the founder and managing partner at SkyBridge, a multi-billion-dollar global investment firm.
If you believe that this is digital gold and it's going to go from $1.8 trillion to $20 trillion, then you're going to sit in the asset. If I'm right about Bitcoin, it goes from 80,000 to 400,000. It's going to be 90+% of my net worth because I'm not selling. It's digital property in your portfolio.
If I've learned anything in my decades in finance, it's this.
The leverage is like a spear coming out of the steering wheel. You're in a very fast sports car and you're driving on an icy road. When you need to brake, this is when the leverage is going to hurt you the most. I had a failed relationship with money probably for the first 40 years of my life. When I was your age, my mission in life was to be financially independent. I grew up in a family where there was a lot of stress over money, so I said, okay, I got to become financially independent. I put too much emphasis on that. I probably would have been richer if I put less emphasis on that. How? There's a paradox to wealth, my friend. I have friends of mine that are billionaires. The interest on the interest is more than they could spend, but they're perpetually anxious to acquire more money.
What is your mission?
Here's my spirit animal right here, see? I'm not that familiar with Pudgy Penguin, but I am pudgy, so we'll go with that.
69% of the people who watch this podcast have not subscribed. If you enjoy this show, if it provides value to you in one way, shape, or form, can I please ask you a little favor? Can you click that subscribe button, give this video a like, and leave a comment down below? It helps this show more than you can imagine. My goal is to bring the absolute biggest and brightest people on this channel, and the best way to get there is to have all of us rally together and build the When Shift Happens family. Thank you. This conversation is supported by Jupiter, the most used decentralized trading platform on Solana and the largest DAO in the world. Bitwise Asset Management, the crypto specialist asset manager with more than $10 billion in client assets and more than 30 crypto solutions across ETFs, index funds, alpha strategies, staking, and more. 3. A scalable layer 1 blockchain that's fast, secure, and affordable, built by previous Facebook developers, and that delivers the benefits of Web3 with the ease of Web2. And Mental, an Ethereum layer 2 that built two products I particularly like. FBTC, which enables you to borrow and lend Bitcoin in DeFi, and METH or METH, one of the largest ETH liquid staking protocols in crypto.
Also, how old are you?
33.
33, see? So
How old do I look like? That's the classic question that every woman actually asks.
What do the women say? How old do they think you look? 25?
No,
28?
usually, I mean, it depends if I'm shaved or not. So I just went to the barber for a nice haircut and a shave just like 2 hours ago because I was like, man, I look like a caveman. It's not gonna be okay. So depending how I shave, they would say.
Right now, with the current facial hair, how old do they say you look?
Probably they would say 31, 32.
30, yeah, 31, 32. Yeah.
Which
You're my
is
son's age. You're born in 91 or 92?
92. Jan.
And when's your
92.
birthday?
13th of Jan.
Okay, we're the same. Capricorn.
Capricorns.
6th of January.
Capricorns.
But I got you by a lot of years. It's 29 years.
Which means that I have 29 years more to become as famous as you.
Well, you'll be more famous than me by then. Remember, the law of compounding. You're going to be very famous. Marseille, you're French? Say that this name is French, right? Brazilian. I love this. This looks like a shithole from outside, okay? I'm in total shithole. I'm like, where the hell am I?
I told you.
But I'm very impressed on the inside. It looks good.
I told you the best gems are found in
Yes.
the most unlikely places. There's black coffee there if you want. You don't have to drink it.
Took a little bit of the black coffee. I got a little bit of the coconut water. I'm feeling like 10
we're
men.
set.
I'm feeling like 10 men right now.
Amazing. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I
Anthony?
love that. I love the setup. How many years you doing this now?
2 years, a year and a half.
This is good, right?
Every week.
And how much time do you spend a week on your podcast?
A lot.
A lot. See, people don't know. They think you're spending 1 hour a week, but you spend
So I have
12 hours a week to prepare and get guests and everything, right?
a data analytics company since 9 years, not in crypto.
Mm-hmm.
Way easier to run than a podcast.
Yeah, no question.
It's crazy. I mean, you're in the content game, you do all this stuff. It's absolutely crazy.
Plus, for me, the in-studio component is mandatory, which makes it even harder because I live in Singapore. I need to travel a lot to meet everyone. And in crypto, there's not that many big people.
Yeah.
And they're not going to come. I'm not Joe Rogan yet, so they're not going to come to Singapore.
Well, first of all, you have a very big following. God bless you. You're doing a really good job with your podcast. And I listened to it in preparation for this. And you ask good questions.
What did you listen to?
I have it on my phone. Hold on. It was the one with, I didn't recognize the guy, to be honest. Hold on.
I had Ben from Bybit.
Ben from Bybit, yeah.
So it was just like 3 days after the hack.
I thought he did a really good job of explaining what happened and how he did the crisis management of saving the company. And I was also impressed that he got friends of his in the industry to step up and help him.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I thought that was the one. Ben from Bybit.
We talk about that actually.
It was a good podcast for you because it was very topical and people wanted to hear what the hell happened.
Yeah.
And it was a great podcast for him because you're a good interviewer. You let him go and let him tell his story.
That's the idea, actually. I just let people talk, which often there is the feedback. It's very interesting because for me, I'm always telling people, if I have someone who is 100 times smarter than me in front of me, why would I talk, right? Rather listen. So it's just logical, I think.
I think that's the genius of being a good podcaster, if you ask me. You got to let the people talk. Joe Rogan, listen to him. He does very little talking on his podcast. You know, he pushes people, but he doesn't overtalk. So Bitwise is one of your
Bitwise is one of the sponsors. Yeah.
sponsors, yeah. That's Matt and what's the other guy's name? Hogan?
Hunter
Hogan or something, yeah.
Hunter Horsley and
Horsley,
Hogan.
Hunter, yeah, good guys.
Very good guys.
Very, very smart guys.
You said that Joe does a bit of pushing to people, so let me push you a bit.
You can push me. You can push me.
What is your mission?
This is my spirit animal here. Look at this thing. Okay. All right, go ahead. Are we live yet? No,
We're live.
Oh, we are live.
Yes, we are live.
Oh, we're just talking right now, bullshitting. Okay, look.
Yeah, but that's why we do.
Here's my spirit animal right here. See, what's the name of this thing?
Pudgy penguins.
Pudgy penguin. Okay, well that's.
How familiar are you with pudgy penguins?
I'm not that familiar with pudgy penguin, but I am pudgy, so we'll go with that. Okay, we'll go with pudgy penguin. All right, what do you want to talk about, Hanson? Tell me.
What is your mission?
In life or mission in business? Or
in life?
Well, it's changed, frankly. You know, if you asked me when I was 33, when I was your age, my mission in life was to get rich and to be financially independent. I grew up with financial anxiety, and I grew up in a family where there was a lot of stress over money. So I said, okay, I got to solve that for my family. I got to become financially independent. And if I'm being brutally honest, I put too much emphasis on that. I probably would have been richer if I put less emphasis on that.
How?
Well, I think if you have more balance in your life and you're less strained and you're less stressed, you can see the pitches faster, you know, to use an American expression. Or if you're in a football pitch and you're calmer on the field, you can see the play manifesting. When you're tight and you want something so badly, you can sometimes make mistakes, or you can get over anxious, or you can almost deal yourself out of the play. You know, you got to be careful of doing that. As a younger person, if I could talk to my younger version of myself, my 32, 33-year-old version of myself, I would say, calm down. It'll all come, but calm down. You don't have to be tight. You could be loose.
What's an example of mistake you've done that prevented you from getting where you wanted faster?
Well, I mean, we're going to go back 20 years. I had a business partner who was way more aggressive than me. And I live by the following philosophy: leave money on the table for my business partners. Why do I do that? Because I believe that you can always have more business. Somebody by the name of Li Ka-shing said that to me when I was 35. Do you know who this man is, Li Ka-shing?
No.
But you live in Singapore.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you look up Ka-shing Li, L-I, he is the property tycoon in Hong Kong. He is 90, I'm going to say 95 now, maybe still alive. He's built a beautiful business for himself, Chung Kung Properties. He's also Hutchinson Whampoa. He's one of the richest people in Asia. And I had the opportunity to meet him on his 70th birthday. I was 35 at the time. And we were in his office, and he is a very unassuming man. And I was having a cup of tea with him, and he said to me, Anthony, tell me about the market. So he's 70, I'm 35. This is 25 years ago. I said, well, Mr. Lee, the market could go up or down. I don't need to tell you about the market, and you're probably more informed than me about markets, but I'm only going to be here once in my life, perhaps. You know, you're one of the most successful, most important people in Hong Kong, if not greater Asia. Tell me something about your life that I can take with me for the next half of my life, or exactly 50%. I'm 35, you're 70. And he told me, leave money on the table for your partners. He said that this will make you very happy in life, and you'll also be very rich, because there'll always be a pudgy penguin will come along and want to be your partner because you know how to share. The people that ask for the last nickel, the last Swiss franc, become miserable. And I said, well, why is that, Mr. Lee? He said, because they always leave the table and say, I should have took 2 Swiss francs. I should have took the extra penny. And they drive themselves crazy. And this is very good advice, except when you have a bad partner. Because if you're following that advice, you have a bad partner, he's going to bite your arm. He's going to take your arm up to your shoulder, and he's going to take the half of your body, and he's going to keep pushing. And so if you're somebody that is nervous when you're young, and you don't have the self-confidence that you need to have, you could let that happen to you, and you end up regretting it.
How long did you let that happen to you?
Maybe 3 years. I adjusted it, I fixed it, but I had to come to the reckoning in my ego. I had to come to the reckoning that I made this mistake, and then I had to have the courage to redress it. You see what I mean?
Dear When Shift Happens family, the following message is probably the single most important thing you should take away from today's podcast. If you're serious about your crypto investing journey, please take some time to learn how to self-custody your assets to make sure that nobody can take your coins away, ever. If you don't learn how to be your own bank, it is very likely that one day you will lose all your hard-earned crypto. The safest way to hold your crypto is in a cold storage that we also call hardware wallets. Hardware wallets are not complicated and they give you peace of mind. I personally use a hardware wallet called Trezor. It is open source, very easy to use, and the first hardware wallet created ever. As we like to say it in crypto, not your keys, not your coin. You can order your Trezor wallet with a 10% discount by following the link in the description down below and by using the promo code WSH10. And now, back to the episode.
It's the same as a relationship. I mean,
Yeah,
a
exactly.
romantic relationship often, I mean, or it's the same as hiring the wrong person.
Yeah, exactly.
It always takes a lot of time, and probably the more you do it, the more you get, you learn about yourself, and you learn that, hey, it's kind of normal to make mistakes, and the better, the quicker, the better.
See, remember, we have an unconditional relationship with our parents. They love us unconditionally. And if we're fortunate to have children, we love our children unconditionally. But in a business relationship or a romantic relationship, there has to be some level of symmetry. If people are putting out at the same frequency and at the same intensity, the relationship usually has harmony. If there's an imbalance, then it has to be corrected. In a business relationship, it has to be corrected by, you reduce one partner's economic stake, you raise the other partner. If it's a romantic relationship, it can also be rebalanced, but it has to be addressed. You can't leave it. You can't be passive-aggressive, conflict avoider in something that you're unhappy and not express your unhappiness. And so I would tell my younger self, be more open, be more willing, be more confident to express yourself and be comfortable in your own skin.
Would you tell your younger self to go do some therapy as quickly as possible to learn how to know himself?
Yes, but you have to be careful with therapy, in my opinion, because a lot of therapists want to go back and they want you to relive your childhood and your childhood traumas and all this stuff. I'm not saying that's bad, but I want to be a forward thinker. I can't really change the past. I can heal myself and I can reconcile what's happened, let things go and learn forgiveness and things like that. But you really want to be, if you're in a therapy, you almost need like a life coach, someone that's going to help you, he or she direct you forward. What am I doing today is going to make my life better? What am I going to do tomorrow? How am I setting up my future? You see what I mean? I like therapy. I'm all for therapy. And I have had therapy. But I do believe that the best path is the one that's related to the future, not reliving the past.
You're someone who
I
doesn't.
didn't realize this was going to be like a philosophy. This is very good, no? We're going to get into stoicism now?
That's what we do here.
All right, good. This is
It's a
good. This is
crypto
productive.
podcast, but we talk about real stuff instead of the next 100x shit.
I like it. Fellow Capricorn, so you're an earth sign like me.
Absolutely. You're a Capricorn, you're a forward thinker, but you're much more than that. Who are you?
It's a great question. I don't want to make it too complicated. There's the ego part of me, which is my self-identity. And then if you can kill the ego, if you're fortunate enough in your life to experience some level of ego death, then you can see the real you. You see what I mean? So you come into a podcast like this with your exoskeleton and your battle armor, and you're going to present yourself a certain way that sticks to the self-talk and the self-narrative. That's the ego part of me. But then behind the ego part of me, after you see what the ethereal nature is of you or me, okay, I think it's a little different than the perception, you know?
Tell me a bit more about this ego death experience.
Well, for me, I think and it could be from some level of success that I've achieved in my life. I mean, I'm not the richest person, but I have enough wealth to sort of be less anxious about it. I would say that for me, the less ego part of me is more in tune with people, more empathetic, more psychologically minded, more thoughtful about their life experiences. You've heard this word, the German word Sonder, S-O-N-D-E-R. What does this mean in German?
Sonder.
Yeah. It's a psychological term. It means that you have a life and you have a narrative in your life. You have people that you love. You have a father and a mother and potentially siblings and relationships, and you have this whole ecosystem that's revolving around you. Yet if I walk by you on the street, you're just another passerby to me, right? You're in my field of vision, but Sonder is when a human being can look at Marcel, your producer, and say, okay, Marcel has his own life. He's got his own narrative. He's got his own thing that is going on. And you start to feel from him and appreciate from him the ethereal nature of what's going on in his life, and whatever the complications may be, whatever the neuroses he may have or non-neuroses, or how he's working on things about himself. And so this word Sonder, the German word, is a description of understanding that, yes, you have your narrative and you have your life and you have your ecosystem, but every stranger, every passerby has this going on as well. And I think if you can start to bring that out, I think the non-ego part of you, when you can start to see people with that level of empathy, I think it's very healthy, and I think it's led to better relationships for me.
So it's basically empathy, but higher level of empathy.
I think it's exponential empathy. I think it would not just be empathy, but it would be in a different category.
You mentioned before that you grew up with financial anxiety. There's a common pattern across most of the very successful people who I interview on this podcast. They have a childhood trauma or something that happened in their life that gave them a chip on the shoulder.
Yeah.
What happened in your life that might explain your hunger for success?
Well, I mean, a lot of different things have happened in my life, but I guess the core memory things that I could bring up on a podcast like this were related to my dad's anxiety. You know, my father was born in a northeastern coal mining town, Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. He was actually born in Plains Hospital in Lucerne County in the northeastern part of Pennsylvania, which was an industrial area, very, very poor. If you looked up my father's home that he was raised in on Zillow, the Zestimate for his home in today's dollars is $34,000. Just to give you a sense for the area, the poverty in the area, the rural nature of the area. The family didn't really have a hot water heater. They had a propane torch that heated the water, and they had a bathtub in the kitchen. Literally in the kitchen, they had a curtain. And the kids, there were 7 of them, they took the bath before they went to school. In the kitchen, my grandmother would bring the hot water from the sink, okay, that was just heated up in the propane from the stove, I should say, and they'd pour it into the bathtub so they could take a bath. That's the family that my dad grew up in. So this was a poor Italian family. Like if I did my genealogy, my daughter wants Italian citizenship, so I had to go back. And the Napoleonic Code in southern Italy is very proficient. You can go back 200 years. You could see each of the relatives with the birth certificates and everything because of the way they kept the records. And if you looked at the family that I came from, it's day worker, day farmer, feudal farmer, if you really go back far enough, and that's literally like being somebody's slave on their land. And so I'm from a family of day workers and feudal farmers and day laborers that come to America. My grandfather becomes a coal miner. My father becomes a crane operator. There's no wealth in the family. And with that, there comes a lot of anxiety. You're trying to make the expenses match the revenues. And so when my father had work and overtime, it was easier. But if you got cut back, if there was a recession, there was anxiety in the house. Where are we going to cut things? Where are we going to make things work and meet? Grew up in a small house, older brother, younger sister. And so I was 11 or 12 years old. I got myself a paper route. And I said, okay, I got to help my parents. I was going door to door selling newspapers out on Long Island, knocking on doors, suburban women, asking them to buy the newspaper. And by the end of 1976, I was making maybe $55 an hour. I'm sorry, $55 a week, I should say. It was probably like $3 an hour for the time that I was working. And I would give 35 of that to my mom and keep 20 for myself. And so you develop a hustling streak, and that's how it happens. And you're like, okay, I got to break out of where I am now, and I got to get myself educated, and I got to have a white-collar job, not a blue-collar job like every one of my family members. That's where I think my motivation comes.
How did you do that? Because it's probably not easy to break.
It's definitely not easy. I mean, come on. There'll be people listening to your podcast that will get exactly what I'm saying. You have obstacles. There were drugs in the neighborhood. There were people that were taking a fast move. There were dealing drugs, buying and selling drugs. There were people that were working in, criminal activity that you could say was somewhat organized criminal activity. So you could that's a fast buck and easy money. Or you could take my route, which is borrow the money, get yourself educated, go to undergrad, go to law school, try to end up at a big investment bank somewhere, which if you can make it happen, it's life-changing. But at the same time that you're trying to make it happen, you don't know how to make it happen. I'm dressed in the wrong clothing. I'm not speaking the right language. You see what I mean?
So you borrowed the money.
I borrowed the money, yeah, sure.
How long did you need to make it back? And how did you feel? Because you say you don't know how you're going to make it, but this is basically entrepreneurship in a way.
Yeah.
I know I'm going to make this happen. I just don't know how. And I need to be comfortable with chaos.
But I'll tell you something. I think this is important because a lot of the times when you're an entrepreneur, there's lots of different motivations. One of them was I didn't want to let down my folks. And I'll tell you this story. It was April of 1982. I was 18 years old. I'd gotten accepted to Tufts University. And that was a controversial school for me and my brother to go to because it was very expensive. And the guidance counselor in our town, he was the high school guidance counselor. So it's the person who helps you pick the college you're going to go to, or if you're not going to go to college, help you pick the finishing school to learn a trade. He was Italian. And he came to my parents' house. The table was a little bit smaller than this. And they had a hot pot of espresso. And the espresso in my family would come out like almost, it looked like black syrup. It was so strong, And they were sitting there smoking cigarettes, drinking the espresso, old school Italians, right? Zanetti, he had a cigarello. It was sit at the table. And in Italian, he would tell my father, you got to send these kids to the private school. It's more expensive than the state school, but they're going to learn different things and they're going to get attracted to different people and they're going to have a higher trajectory. Their slope of their success will be higher if you send them to the private school. And my father was uneducated. He didn't really know the difference between these different schools, but he took the guy's advice. And in April of 1982, I came home from school and my father presented me with a check for $10,000, which at the time was a lot of money. And I said, Pop, what is the check for? And he said, I cashed my union life insurance policy. This is the cash value of my life insurance policy. I don't have enough money to put you through the school, but I'm going to get you started. Here's $10,000. Take the savings from your work and borrow some money from the school and get some, government-sponsored student loans and, make your way. That check was a core memory for me that changed the trajectory of my life because I was a smart kid, but I was driving around in a Camaro. I had my hair blown back like John Travolta on Saturday Night Fever. I was chasing skirts all over Long Island. You know what I mean? I had the power booster in the car, blaring the music. And when I got the check from my father, I was like, I can't let this man down. I got to go take this seriously. When I get to Tufts, I'm going to stop all my nonsense and I'm going to study and I'm going to get myself prepared for professional school like a law school or a business school or something like that. So yeah, there are things that happen to you that ring your bell and get you motivated. Some of it is anxiety and some of it is also fear that you don't want to let down the people that are banking on you, My parents were blue collar, but they were economically aspirational. They wanted the kids to do better than themselves.
One of your favorite books is The 48 Laws of Power.
Yeah.
By Robert Greene.
Mm-hmm.
In a nutshell, this book is about the fact that every human has a dark side. I'd like to ask you, what's the deepest and darkest side of yours that you have to deal with and have learned to control to master life?
That's a great question. This is why your podcast is so good. So, but let's talk about that for a second because Hesse writes about this. Hermann Hesse, the German writer, he writes about this in the book Damien, right? He calls it the abraxas, right? Or you can see it in the ancient Asian world. We have the white and the black in the disc, right? And or the Greeks would say you have tragedy and comedy in your life, right? You have the good and bad, the white and the dark. And so what Robert Greene is saying, Robert Greene, to me, is one of the brilliant writers. You should get him on your podcast, even though he's not a crypto guy, because he's been on my podcast, and he's a brilliant understander of human nature. And the reason I like the book is that we try to pretend that we don't have a dark side. Again, that's the ego part of us, right? We're getting up in the morning, and we're presenting ourselves as this Mother Teresa. We try to do everything right, and we're good, and we're pure. But there's always some nefarious thing that's going on in our personalities. Of course, we want to hide that from people because we don't want people to think poorly of us. Okay. And so one of the things that I had to deal with, which I think many people have to deal with, and something Robert writes about in the book, is the comparative analysis and the envy that comes with a comparative analysis. And it would be dishonest for somebody listening. It'd be dishonest of you to tell me that you've never been envious of anybody. If you were honest with me, you'd have to say, yes, I have. I have felt this emotion because the point of Robert's book is that you're living in a 100,000-year-old piece of machinery. It hasn't had a software upgrade in 100,000 years. This phone that I'm sitting with next to the Pudgy Penguin, this phone went from iPhone 1 to iPhone 16 on its way to 17 in less than 20 years. But not you, not me. We're living in a 100,000-year-old piece of machinery, and there's atavism in your brain, and there's primordial instincts in your brain. And so the envy comes from your survival mechanism. If you're in a big cave and you got a hot cave woman, I'm coming over to the cave and hit you in the head with a rock. I'm going to take you cave woman. I'm going to take you cave. Right? That's what I'm going to do. Right? But we're now,
of course.
Okay, but now we're in a modern society where there's lots of abundance. So how do you transform that level of thinking? How do you push that excess darkness out of your personality? And what I tell my kids, and I have 5 of them, is you will be better off in your life if you can celebrate the successes of your friends. And if you can build the habit of celebrating, instead of feeling bad that your friend made the $1 billion and you didn't make the $1 billion, and you think less of yourself, or you're sore at yourself, or feeling envy, you will be better off if you can hit the transformation button in your personality. It's a transcendental button. If you can become more sublime and you can punch out of the animalistic atavism in your personality that creates envy, and you can hit the love button, or you can reach over to your friend and say, hey, congratulations on this amazing podcast, and God bless you. I hope it continues. You want to be the first call. Something good happens to you. I want to be in your outlook where you're going to call me first to share the news. And you're not going to feel jealousy from me, or you're not going to feel envy from me. And it's something that you can work out, but you have to build the habit of that. And that's something that Robert understands better than most people. And I give him a lot of credit for that, because it also creates honesty in yourself. Now, have you ever felt envy before?
Of course.
As
many times, probably every day.
Okay, well, as many people, but you can work it out. You can work it out.
What I noticed about celebrating other people is it really gets, I'm not sure if it comes with maturity or with success. I feel like the more successful you are, or let's say, the more you do well compared to what you wanted to do, the easier it is afterwards to say, congratulations to someone else, because you're happy with yourself.
Right.
And the more you're happy with yourself, the more you're going to celebrate other people.
I think that is honest, and I think that that's true, but you got to try to get there before that.
Yeah.
You got to get there before that.
Much harder.
Okay. I was in a situation in your country, Switzerland. I was in Davos. I was 44 at the time, and I was surrounded by billionaires in their 20s. You know, they had founded social media companies, and they were in this place or they were that place, and they were all geniuses. And I was sitting there feeling bad about myself. I had what I call Davos envy. I wrote about it in my first book. And then I went back to my room, and I thought about it for a moment, and I said, you know, I can't compare myself to anybody else, because I've had my own life. I've had my own life experience, and I've had my own DNA. And let's face it, you do have your own destiny. And you may think that you're in control of every aspect of your destiny, but you're not. You didn't pick your birth. You didn't pick your sex. You didn't pick your sexuality. I believe that you're born with that. You didn't pick your family members. You didn't pick your parents.
Did you pick country?
Did you pick the location of your birth, or the country affiliation? You didn't pick any of this. And so a result of which you cannot be president. I can't be president either, but I'm born in the country, so I could theoretically be president, but you were not born in the United States. This is something that you didn't pick. By the way, you don't want to be president. That's a shitty job. But the point I'm trying to make is that there's stuff in your life that have predestined you to certain outcomes, and you have to be understanding of that, and you have to accept that. You know, if your father is a lawyer and your mother's a teacher and they're computer literate, and they send you to a computer laboratory when you're a young kid because they know that you are naturally a computer geek, so they send you to the 10,000 hours of training to be a computer person, and then they help you get the software contract with the mainframe company IBM, and you have the operating software, and that company's focused on hardware, and you become Microsoft. A lot of different things have to happen for you to be in that position to take advantage of that. Do you see what I mean?
Absolutely.
And so you have to have a self-awareness, and you have to have a comfort in your own skin about your own levels of success. So even if you're not as successful as you would like to be, you still have to be able to take that leap and share the success of your friends.
Otherwise, it's going to be miserable. It's the same as what you were saying in the beginning, right?
Yeah.
Share the success with your friends. Share the success with your business partners. Leave someone on
You
the
have
table.
children? No, you're too young. Not yet. So
Am I too young? That's a good one.
Well, I don't know.
I feel like I should get going.
I had my first kid at 28, but I was a different generation. But what I say to my kids who are your age, I say, there's only two things I can give you. The money is not going to help you. If anything, the money will cause some problems, and it'll create some anxiety if it's not managed properly.
So what are you going to do with that?
We'll talk about that in a second. But the only thing I can really give you, only thing is two gifts. Number one, celebrate the successes of your friend. You'll be very happy. Number two, you have to do something in this life that you love. Do you like this job being a podcaster?
I love it. It's not easy, but I love it.
You love it because you're learning, you're meeting new people. You like the notoriety. I can smell that on your personality. You do. You like meeting the people. Don't bullshit
Can't
me.
lie.
Don't bullshit
I'm not allowed
me.
to lie.
Don't bullshit me. You go into the room and people see you and they recognize you from the podcast and they say, "Ooh," and you feel good about it. I understand that. God bless you. You should feel good about it. But and the Europeans have a little bit of false modesty about themselves. Americans don't give a shit.
I don't. Yeah, that's the thing. We don't talk in Switzerland, especially. You just don't.
Yeah,
talk about
because you have the tall,
yourself.
you have the tall poppy syndrome or the Schadenfreude. You're worried about the Schadenfreude, right? So you have to be careful. But you like it, and you should like it. But my message, if you were my son, is you got to pick something that you really love because the time is going to go by very quickly. And in the immortal words of Mel Brooks, relax. None of us are getting out of here alive, okay? So far, nature and age is undefeated. And so a result of which you have to live like you really mean it. You can't be living in fear. What are you fearing? Your life's going to end in death anyway. Go for the thing that you really want to do. Go for the thing in your mind where you're not working. You see, you pick something that you really, really love. So you wake up in the morning. You said it's hard, but you like the challenge of the hardness. Hard is not
Couldn't
bad.
be without it.
Yeah, hard is not bad. The intellectual stimulation is something you're not going to be able to live without. So you'll be doing this for a very long time. But my point is, those are the only two gifts. Money's separate. You have to have the right relationship with money. I had a failed relationship with money probably for the first 40 years of my life. And like you said, when you get some measure of success, then you have to make a decision. Should I stay perpetually anxious? And I have friends of mine that are billionaires. Billionaires. They could never spend the money. The interest on the interest is more than they could spend. But they're perpetually anxious, and they didn't stop the fever to acquire the money.
That's probably why they're a billionaire too.
I mean, why they're a billionaire.
Yeah.
Okay, but you have to be careful because with that, there's a paradox. Right? There's a paradox to wealth, my friend. Okay, if you live in the big mansion and you got the 10 acres around the house, you could end up lonely. You got to be careful. I live in a suburban house where the kids can cross the street, knock on the door of the next door neighbor, and pull two kids out and go use the half-court basketball in the driveway. Or they can get their scooters and they could go right around the neighborhood. You got to be very, very careful. You're going to be super rich. You're going to fly the private plane. God bless. But now you're isolated. You're going to have your own yacht. God bless. But now you're isolated. You got to be very, very careful because when you start to isolate yourself, you start to act idiosyncratic and you start to develop weirdness, and you don't want that. Also, when you're so rich, you think everybody's coming for you, like the pudgy penguin is coming for you. The pudgy penguin wants something from you. You see what I mean?
Absolutely.
And you got to be careful.
Yeah.
And so you always have your guard up.
Yeah.
Like people want my money or they want me to invest in their fund or they want me to buy into their soda factory or whatever the hell they want to do. So you always have your guard up. You got to be careful. There's a paradox of the money. It can make you lonely.
Talking about money. We're here to talk about a new form of money. How did you get so fascinated by the world of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies?
Well, I was a skeptic. If you followed my career, and I wrote this in my book, I just wrote a book. Michael Saylor wrote the foreword called The Little Book of Bitcoin. And the book is about Bitcoin, yes, but it's also about my odyssey into Bitcoin. And it's about other people's odysseys, whether it's a Stan Druckenmiller or a Ray Dalio or a Paul Tudor Jones or a Michael Saylor. Many of these people start out as skeptics of Bitcoin. They don't really understand it. And then if they do the homework on it, I submit to you, your viewers and listeners, if you do the homework on Bitcoin, you generally go towards it. Say if there's 100 people and they're super smart people, very intellectually curious, and they said, okay, I'm going to spend the next 6 weeks learning about Bitcoin, meeting people like yourself, reading everything, the white paper, going to talk to core developers of Bitcoin. When they're done, they will generally be a Bitcoin proponent. They will generally go towards Bitcoin. I would say of 100 people, 95 will do that. Maybe there'll always be 5 people that'll be the skeptic and hate it no matter what. But to do the homework is to go towards Bitcoin. And so for me, I was a skeptic. I read in the book, I actually met Hal Finney. I think you know who he is. Yeah. Peter Diamandis introduced me to him back in 2012. And he was explaining Bitcoin to me. I did not understand it. Of course, everyone wishes at that time that you did. And by the way, even if I understood it and liked it, I probably wouldn't even known how to buy it at that time. But I didn't understand it. When I got to the White House in 2017, there were 2 Federal Reserve officials. They had published a white paper on the digitization of the U.S. dollar. You can go back midsummer 2017. And they were in the White House talking about this. And I said, well, what do you mean like a digital dollar? I said, well, we would digitize the dollar over the blockchain. I said, the blockchain like Bitcoin? Yes, like Bitcoin. And I was like, oh my God, I am so out of it. I'm a 53-year-old man. I think Bitcoin is bullshit. I don't understand it. There are 2 Fed people talking about digitizing the U.S. dollar on the blockchain. I better get up to speed on this. I owe myself, I owe my family to get up to speed on this. Boom. A couple of days later, I got fired from the White House. I went back to SkyBridge. I bought the URL skybridgebitcoin.com, and I started doing the homework. But even then, I was nervous to buy Bitcoin. I was an institutional investor, had lots of clients, had the wirehouses as clients. Bitcoin was speculative. Bitcoin was volatile. You know, I think it peaked back in 2017 at like 20,000, and then it crashed after that. And so now I was looking at these prices. I was like, wow, this is things like an 80, 100 vol security, asset, token, whatever you want to call it, commodity. Because it's too dangerous. I don't want to buy it. So I wrote down 3 things. I said, if Bitcoin reaches these 3 things in my mind, we're going to buy Bitcoin. Number 1. Will it scale? Will it get to 100 million wallets? Number 2, can I get comfortable with U.S. regulation of Bitcoin? Can I get comfortable with the future regulatory environment for Bitcoin? And then the third thing is, where can I store my Bitcoin? Because as an older person who's a little bit technophobic, I didn't want to have a cold storage wallet with my own catchphrase. And if I'm going to buy 9 figures of Bitcoin for my institutional investors, where can I put the Bitcoin? And so 1, heading towards 100 million wallets, maybe 80, 85 million wallets, getting towards the end of 2020. Number 2, the IRS deemed Bitcoin tangible property. So I didn't learn a lot in law school, but I did learn one thing, that property in the United States is sacrosanct. You can come with a Democratic president, a Republican president. We have 900 years of legal precedent dating back to the Magna Carta, of common law precedent on the integrity of property and the sanctity of property in the United States. And so if Bitcoin is deemed intangible property by the IRS, it can be very hard to take it from you, okay, without representing fair values. It'd be very hard to make it illegal in the United States. And so even though the regulatory environment wasn't fully articulated, I said, well, that is a precursor for a favorable long-term regulatory environment. And then the third thing, of course, is Fidelity was offering storage. NYDIG was offering storage. Coinbase Pro was offering successful bells and whistles. Places like Bitwise are now like that. And so once I got comfortable, me and my team, we made a $100 million purchase of Bitcoin in the 16, 17, 18, 20,000 zone. This was like sort of say October to December of 2020. But then we made more purchases. We made purchases at 69,000 in November. And so we scaled into it. And clients called me an idiot for being an investor in Bitcoin. By the end of 2021, they called me a genius. And then, of course, Bitcoin crashed. At the end of 2022, I was an idiot. I went from genius to idiot. And then if the people stayed, even though I was an idiot, they stayed. They did very well in 23 and 24. But a lot of people left. And some of the journalists wrote nasty stories about me. They wrote my financial obituary, which is part of this. But if you want to be an entrepreneur and you want to be bold and you want to adapt your business to the future, you have to be willing to take those hits as a human being.
I read somewhere you have more than 50% of your net worth in Bitcoin.
It's a little over 70 right now, yeah. But that's a byproduct of buying it and sitting in it. Let's say you have a 15% position in Bitcoin when you are looking at your overall portfolio. You have a 15% position in Bitcoin, it goes 6 to 1. You know, your other stuff's not moving like that. And so it starts to eat your portfolio from a pizza slice perspective. Do you see what I mean?
Absolutely.
And, Saylor said something to me. He said, I like your book, but I don't like the last chapter. I said, what's wrong with the last chapter? He says, well, you get done telling me this is the greatest idea ever. Best idea that you have had in 36 years of being on Wall Street, Bitcoin. I said, yes, I did say that. Then why the hell are you recommending a 2% position at the end of the book?
I wrote something about that.
Yeah. And I said, well, Michael, I'm trying to be conservative. Let me tell you something. Do you have 49 other good ideas like this? I said, no, sir, I don't. He said, well, you got to rewrite the chapter. So I did. I rewrote it.
What did you rewrite?
Basically,
what's your recommendation now to people you used to tell put 2%?
This is what I have. People like Saylor have 100% or 99.8 or whatever the number is. I have 70. If I'm right about Bitcoin, it's going to go up. If Bitcoin goes from 80,000 to 400,000, it's going to be 90+% of my net worth because I'm not selling. So the other stuff will not grow up as fast as this. If you believe that this is digital gold and it's going to go from $1.8 trillion to $20 trillion, and it may take 10 years to do that, then you're going to sit in the asset. And so what I would say to you is that you either see it and you're very comfortable with it when it goes from 108 to 78. You're very comfortable. Or you don't see it. And you're going to be a short-term renter of Bitcoin. You're going to buy into Bitcoin. You're going to sell Bitcoin. You're going to buy into Bitcoin. Or you can think like a landlord. And you can treat it like it's property. It's digital property in your portfolio. It's like if you and I bought this building. I mean, could I just tell people, this guy's in a very shitty building here somewhere in the middle of New York. I mean, it looks nice in here, but outside kaputs. But I'm just saying the building's probably expensive. You bought the building and you held the building. That's what you got to do with Bitcoin. You mad at me because I shit on the real estate or not? No, I'm just checking. About maybe
They might be mad.
I might be a little upset. Okay, sorry.
I've recorded from much worse building than that in Singapore, like old Chinese buildings where I brought like some really, really big people. And they're like, what is that? And I'm like, this is
that they teach.
I brought Raul actually there the first time.
Raul, yeah.
And he was like, man, I thought I got lost. I was like, yeah, this is the first test.
I was just with him. I love him. Yeah, I spent a lot of time.
He's amazing.
Yeah.
He's an amazing person. And he's just, yeah. He also took a lot of shit. Actually, we talked for 2 hours and a half last time on the podcast, and I asked him about, you talked about when people call you an idiot. He's been called an idiot a lot, usually online, and we talked a lot about dealing with FUD and all that stuff. I think like everybody who is taking risks and doing it publicly, like will go through that at some point, especially in volatile industries like that.
You just went to the Abundance 360 event together. I brought Lynn Alden, who I know you know, to talk about the macro currency dynamic. And Raul was talking about the macro cryptocurrency dynamic. And we had dinner together. And we worked together at Goldman many, many years ago. And I credit him as sort of an elder statesman who has seen a lot of different market cycles. And I credit him for seeing the wave of digital financial technology, fintech, digital innovation. And he got there ahead of me, frankly. And I credit him as being one of my Sherpas.
Amazing at explaining things very simply and calming down everyone when things are volatile. I mean, amazing. An amazing guest also on the podcast.
I'm a very big fan of his.
I think we all are. There's a bunch of question I have on the book, Bitcoin book, the little book of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
You wrote, if I've learned anything in my decades in finance, it's this. Don't let the press manage your money. Why?
Well, the press is trying to get eyeballs. They're not trying to get intrinsic. They're not trying to identify intrinsic value. So if things are going down, there's a great study. If you bought the breaking news, catastrophic CNBC news stories, if you bought them, you like tripled the return of the market, meaning you got to buy on those really, really bad days. Every time they're out there saying that the world's coming to an end, you got to step into the breach and buy, The 2022 situation with Bitcoin was a little bit more unique because there was some fraud going on in the system and there was excess leverage in the system. And so when the fraud was exposed and the leverage was punctured, the bubble really came down fast. If you said to me in November, when Bitcoin was 69,000, if you said to me, we're at 69,000, how low could we go? I was, could correct 40%. You go from 70,000 to call it 42,000. That's a 40% healthy early stage technology volatility curve. But you corrected from 69,000. There was a flash print at 12,000. I don't know if people remember this in January. It flashed down to 12,000. And so this was extraordinary pain. And this is a big lesson in an asset like this. No leverage. Don't hold it with leverage. Because the leverage, to quote Warren Buffett, is like a spear coming out of the steering wheel. You're in a very fast sports car and you're driving on an icy road, a mountainous road in Switzerland, and it's icy. And you're in the sports car. When you need to brake, this is when the leverage is going to hurt you the most. And so I didn't own any of this stuff with leverage. But the press can be mean, and the press is looking for an eyeball. They're looking for the attention. So they'll find a story that's a car crash, or they'll find a story that's controversial, and they'll spend their day on that because this is what we like. Our brains are set up for the brains don't like the good news. The brains like the bad news. We stop, There's an expression in the press, if it bleeds, it leads. The top stories are the ones where there's blood on the newspaper,
Yeah.
But you got to be a big boy. What are you going to do? You're going to make a bet and you're going to get the bet wrong temporarily. But if you've done your homework and you're right about it long term, or do you have the strength? Have the strength to stay in the position? And so thankfully we've had that strength.
And to buy the blood when it's in the street.
Yeah, exactly. The blood is on the newspaper page. You should be buying.
Absolutely.
That's a Rothschild expression.
Money is what happens when you combine belief and technology. Can you explain?
Yeah. So I think that what happens to us is we manifest things. We believe certain things. And I think the generators of Bitcoin, the Satoshi team, maybe it was one person. Maybe it was a computer programming team. But I think they probably looked at eCash and other type DigiCash and other types of potential technological currencies. And they said, okay, these all failed for different reasons. What iteration of this could we create that would make it not fail, that would allow it to scale? And I think the anonymity is a feature, not a bug of Bitcoin. I think the fact that we don't know who Satoshi is and that the wallet hasn't moved is a very good sign for the progenitor of Bitcoin. And so there's a belief there. What was the belief? The belief was that we could take the keys away from the central bankers that are drunk drivers. Okay, we have had drunk driving with our currency for the last 50 plus years. So take the keys away from the drunk drivers that are inflating the currency, monetizing debt, executing wars around the world by printing money effectively. The belief was, could we create something hard? Could we create something unhackable, immutable, that we could use between ourselves, where we would not have to trust a central authority, that we ourselves through the network would be the central authority.
Mm.
So therefore, there's nobody to trust because there's so many people involved with the trust. And that's a belief. And so to take that belief and turn it into a technology, okay, I think that's the intersection of the funnest parts of being in business or the funnest parts of life. That creation.
There's an amazing book. The book that I read, 2 books that made me go all in Bitcoin and crypto in late 18, early 19. And one is called the Bitcoin Standard, obviously.
Fascination, yep.
It's absolutely talking about that, right?
Mm-hmm.
The other one was Antonopoulos, The Internet of Money.
Yeah,
Andreas Antonopoulos.
Yeah.
But the Bitcoin Standard is it's called the Bitcoin Standard. 80% doesn't talk about Bitcoin. It's just about evolution of money and talks exactly about what you're talking about here.
Well, where I praise him, and I'll say this about Mr. Amos, okay, Safadean, who I've had on my podcast. If I have a crisis of faith,
You will go back to the book.
I go back to the book.
Absolutely.
If I'm worried the volatility is affecting my mood, like you can pretend that it's not going to affect you, but it does affect you. You know, when it moves, boom, you're like, okay, maybe I got this wrong. Maybe this thing's trading to zero. Let me go reread the Bitcoin Standard. And then when you're done reading, you're like, okay, let me see how I can buy more of this shit. You know what I mean? That's what happens, you know. So I praise him. He gets very high praise. I think he's a genius.
Absolutely.
And I think he's a visionary. And I think he has balls.
Yeah.
So I respect him.
And he doesn't care about what people think. Absolutely.
I love that about him. He doesn't care what other people think. And okay, and we may not agree all the time on the politics, but I love the fact that he has a point of view. That's what makes the world great, is we can have opposing points of view, but we can still respect each other intellectually.
He's very harsh against shitcoins or non-Bitcoin related cryptocurrencies.
Yeah.
What about you?
Well, I'm a Wall Streeter. So I know we have to tokenize over the blockchain. I know that the bond market and the stock market, those securities that are represented right now by QSIP numbers, which if I'm going to trade my stock from my account into your account, it's going to pass through 7 pudgy penguins. 7 different entities is going to have to catch that before it dumps into your account. So if you're telling me that there's technology available where I can put a contract on a layer 1 protocol and I can deliver that into your account, bypassing all of these third parties, unleashing a tremendous amount of cost savings, and that cost savings can go to you and me and could get dumped back into the global marketplace, the global economy, to lead to more economic efficiency, more technological development, then I want that. So I'm not a Bitcoin I am a Bitcoin maximalist when it comes to understanding the nature of Bitcoin and its store of value. But I own other coins because I do believe in the utility of these layer 1s. And I do believe what Larry Fink is saying, the CEO of BlackRock, that we are going to tokenize the stock and bond market. We're not going to do that on Bitcoin. Could we do that on Avalanche? Yes. Could we do that on Ethereum? Possibly. Unlikely, because it's still pretty expensive. Could we do it on Solana? Yes. You see what I mean? So I own some of those other coins, if you want to call them coins, protocols. I see this like the cloud. So you're a young man, so you don't remember the advent of the cloud. Okay, but the cloud scared the shit out of everybody. Okay, so what do you mean? I'm going to take my top secret data from my company and I'm going to hand it over to your company and I'm going to put it into the cloud. Nobody wanted to do it.
Yeah, I know that because I built my first data company in 2015 and we built it directly on the cloud, and it was a nightmare to get a lot of industries moving to that. And we knew within 5 years, 2020, like most people, the companies will have to go there, right? Because it's so much better. And
of course,
but it was impossible to explain them. Like most people are like, no, there's no way we're going to do that on our own servers, in our on-premise, they call that, right?
Of course. Well, listen, there were generators in this town that we're in right now on the island of Manhattan. The first electricity was born from the home generator and the gasoline or the oil that was getting sent into the generator to make the electricity for the house. And then people said, okay, well, hold on a second. We can create a power plant and use alternating current, and we could pulse it through the lines, and we could have one central authority make the electricity for everybody. Right? It's a game changer. And it's the same thing with the cloud. People were nervous in the beginning, and then they yielded to the cloud, and they realized how much cost savings there were. It's the same thing with the paycheck industry, right? In the U.S., you can go to a paycheck provider, and you don't have to have that whole accounting staff on call. And it's cheaper for you, and it's actually better. It's more efficient. This is the same thing. There will be protocols. These are operating softwares. This is like the cloud. You can't see it right now. There's still a resistance to it. There's still regulatory resistance, frankly, in the U.S. to it, which obviously is coming to an end. And so I want to own some of this stuff. So I think when somebody tells me that Ethereum is a store of value, then I'm with Safadeh and Amos. I say, no, it's not a store of value. Solana is a store of value. No. Solana could be very valuable the same way Microsoft or Apple or NVIDIA can be very valuable, but it's not a store of value. It's not gold. It's not digital property, to quote Saylor.
Yeah.
See the difference?
Although, especially in the last, 1-2 decades, stocks like Apple and a bunch of others have been used as store of value.
Yeah.
They have been because of too much money in the system, and you have to find, yeah.
And I accept that. I accept that, but it's not from an academic
Absolutely.
and from an ideological perspective. It's not pure. If you said to me, gold is a store of value, I'd say, okay, well, we have 5,000 years. And if Lynn Alden was on the podcast, she would say, gold was your first proof of work. You had to go mine that shit, man. You had to go dig it out of the ground, and it's very rare, and it's an attractive piece of metal, and so it's your first proof of work. And so we put that away, and we consider that a store of value. I don't see Microsoft or Apple like that, but I see the point that you're making, that it was a repository, it was an opportunity cost repository, given where rates were and given where the dollar was and so on and so forth. I do accept that.
You tweeted, we believe in a United States strategic Bitcoin reserve, not because it will help Bitcoin, but because it will help the United States.
I believe
Explain.
Well, listen, I think Bitcoin, it will help Bitcoin in the sense that if the U.S. starts buying it, the price of Bitcoin will go up, it'll force more adoption. So I don't necessarily think that's why we should do it. We should do it because it will help the United States. We should do it because Saylor is correct that if it is a piece of the operating layer of the future of transactions, if it is a piece of something that people can rely on, that can't get corrupted by central banks, if it's something that can't be monetized or inflated away, the value that's inside the network, then the network should be held in reserve. The same way gold is held in reserve, and frankly, the same way oil is held in reserve. And by the way, there are probably 27 or so things that are held in the U.S. reserve. It would include medical equipment. It would include lithium. It would include rare earth minerals, rare earth metals that the United States thinks that we need for technological preservation of our economy in the event of a nightmare, some type of warfare or something like that. So Bitcoin, if you believe what I believe about Bitcoin, that it is digital property, it is a store of value akin to gold, it is the future of value storage, then the United States should hold it. And if the United States holds it and buys into it now, and I'm right, or Saylor's right, that it could trade to $1 million, or in Saylor's case, $13 million, the United States would be very well benefited by having this asset on its balance sheet. And I applaud David Sachs, frankly, for understanding this, but I also applaud his gradualism. Because if he said Donald Trump is going to sign an executive order, we're going to buy 500,000 Bitcoin. We are in such a polarized society.
Certainly.
We may end up having the next person say, okay, I'm signing an executive order, we're going to sell 500,000 Bitcoin. We don't want that. So I think what Sachs has done is very prudent. He's trying to get a bipartisan commitment. We don't debate in this country gold. In other words, there's not a Democrat that says sell the gold and a Republican says buy the gold. We accept that gold should be in our reserve. Gold should be reserved by the United States. We don't debate. It's apolitical to store and reserve oil. We got to get Bitcoin to that, and I think it's going to take a little bit of time. So I applaud the way they've handle this, and it will be good for the United States.
You wrote another book called From Wall Street to the White House and Back. It's not about Wall Street. It's not about the White House. It's about life. What's the single most important thing to you in life?
I mean, with all sincerity, what we're doing right now, the relationship, relating to others, helping others, appreciating life together, sharing. We are social. Because I am certainly social. And so for me, I want to be with my family. I want to be with my colleagues, my friends, people that I work alongside of. And I want to relate to them, and I want to be able to, feel them, the pathos, right? I want to be able to have that experience. And so if you want to say from a faithful perspective, you have to ground your life in gratitude. If you don't do that, you'll be unhappy, because you'll have the wrong expectations. I expect nothing. I'm here today. I've watched friends of mine die. I lost a friend 2 years ago at age 58 to brain cancer. I lost one of the closest people in my life. 17, it's hard to believe. It would be 16 years ago on June 7, 2009, to stomach cancer. 44-year-old man to stomach cancer. And did he have any control over that? Did he wake up one morning and say, okay, I don't want stomach cancer, let me wish it away? No. His clock started in November of 1964, and it ended in June of 2009. No control of himself. And you are in good shape. I try to keep myself in shape, although I probably eat too much pasta. But you're not in control. Maybe you could have the fish oil tablet and you'll live a day longer, or maybe you won't. You'll get hit by a bus. Who the hell knows? So you're not in control. So don't have high expectations for this experiment. You have to have low expectations. And so if you get a great cup of coffee, you have gratitude. If you have a coconut water that you're enjoying, you're blessed with this and you have gratitude. If you do that in your life, you'll generally be happy. You won't be perfectly happy, because how could you be? You know that people around you that you love are going to die. You will meet your own demise. And so you have to have that in your life as well. There's no nirvana. There's no perfect. You could be the richest and you still have a sell-by date. You could be the poorest and you still have a sell-by date. And so this is the great equalizer. And so the best thing you can do is live in the moment that we have right now, and in that relationship, in that relatability, have some level of success.
What's the worst advice you've ever been given?
Person-centered advice is the worst advice. So if I came to you and I said, give me some advice, and you turned to me and said, well, I did A, and A didn't work out for me, so now my recommendation to you is never do A, only do B. You see what I mean? You go to somebody for advice, and they're talking to you about their life in a very egocentric way, and then they're giving you advice related to their life. Oh. That's not good advice. Good advice. Why are you laughing?
No, because I'm thinking about so many people who would do that. Starting a business is a good one, right? Oh, no, it's too risky, etc. That's why I'm just thinking.
Yeah, but that is, if you have fire in your brain to want to start the business.
Yeah.
I have a son that is in the film business. He has a fire in his brain to be in the film business. He's a creative human being. Should I not endow him with the gift to be in the film business? Or should I talk to him snarkily and tell him he's got to be an investment banker, which is some boring motherfucking shit? Should I tell him to do that? Or should I tell him to be in the film business? What should I tell him to do? Right? So you have to give the advice
that is not
in relationship to the person and the arc of that person's life. And so the worst advice I've gotten, I go to people and they tell me, well, this happened in my life, and therefore this was good, you should do that, and this was bad, you should do this. Hey, I didn't come for that. I came for an observation. I came for the sentiment. I came for, hey, this is what I'm thinking about doing. These are my goals. How can you help me achieve these goals?
You mentioned death multiple times in the last hour.
Mm-hmm.
How do you want to be remembered?
Well, I'm not going to be remembered, so I don't have to worry about that. I mean, so that's my point. I mentioned death because in the book Wall Street and the White House and Back, it's modeled after meditations, right? There's 25 lessons in the book. You can open that book and you can start it anywhere in the book. You don't have to start on lesson 1. It's just I have 25 observations from my 60 years on the planet. I'm 61 now, but when I published the book, I was 60. Here are 25 observations that I've had in my life that I'll share with you. And some of them you may agree with, some of them you may disagree with, but these are my observations. And the number one thing is get comfortable with death. I've mentioned it a number of times on this podcast because you have to get comfortable with death because we are mendacious. We lie to ourselves. Okay, there's a survival mechanism. We can't wake up in the morning and say, holy shit, I'm going to die. We have to have this self-belief that we're going to live forever to manifest ourselves. But that creates a mendacity about your life, right? Homer explained this better than me. Homer had the figure of Cassandra. Do you remember who Cassandra was? Have you read the Iliad? No. Cassandra is the daughter of the king of Troy. And she's Priam's daughter, and she's blessed by the goddesses of having great clairvoyance, but she's also cursed by those goddesses to have nobody believe her. And so she can see the future. She runs to her father, and she says, the Greeks are coming. They're pissed that we took Helen of Troy. They're pissed. And so they're launching 1,000 ships. They're going to come, and they're going to destroy our great city. And Priam laughed at her and said, well, that's not going to happen. Relax. And Homer was trying to say in this metaphorical story that we lie to ourselves. We can't accept the truth. Aaron Sorkin took this concept. He put it into the Jack Nicholson figure in A Few Good Men. You remember the very dramatic scene in the jury? He says, you can't handle the truth. And so what Aurelius would say to you, the general, is that the minute that you can accept death in memento mori, in this moment I can die, you relax. You relax into life and you accept the bounty that today brings to you. And so it's a very, very important concept for people. This is, you can believe when the person gets sick next to you, that's them. It's never going to be you, but someday it will be because nature is undefeated. You see what I mean? And again, it's not to be morbid. If anything, that's to be liberating. That should create liberation. It shouldn't create morbidity. It should create, holy shit, I'm going to do what Steve Jobs said to do in his 2005 commencement address at Stanford. I'm going for it in this life, man. I'm going for it because it's temporal.
Stay hungry, stay foolish.
You stay hungry, you stay foolish, you stay optimistic. And when your kids want to go for ice cream at 11 o'clock p.m., don't be that asshole that says you can't do it, it's too late. Get in the fucking car, take them for the ice cream.
Get in the fucking car, take him to the ice cream. Thank you so much, Anthony, for doing that.
Hey, really good to be.
That was awesome.
Because the accent works for you, by the way. I'll just let you know that, okay?
The accent?
Yeah, it works.
It's because it's Swiss.
It's Swiss, yeah.
It's a bit less
subtle, and it's like a little, you like lure the people in with the accent, and it comes across very smart. Yeah, it's good.
That's my sales trick.
Yeah,
that's my networking trick.
I don't know. Is the New York accent working for me? I don't know. I feel like it's a little overbearing.
I think it's very good.
Because it's okay?
To be honest, for me, I enjoyed the most this podcast with American people because they're really the best guests. They're the best at talking. They're the best at expressing themselves. As you said before, they just think they're amazing and they say it out loud, and it's just so much more entertaining and better for me, but also for the people who are watching. So I enjoy it a lot.
Well, I don't think I'm amazing, but I do think I think. And I'm ready to fucking live my life. I have a podcast with this woman, Catty K. I have a Lamborghini. I'm not afraid to admit that to people. She was upset because she's a Brit. I let her drive the fucking car. She broke the license plate off the car. But down deep, we all want to have the Lamborghini. So just relax. Go get the Lamborghini. That's my message, right?